I'm Shirley Lawson. I'm a development officer here at Call Scotland, and Craig Mill is going to be hosting the webinar. Well, I'm hosting the webinar. Craig is going to be presenting the webinar today. So, as I say, we haven't seen Craig in person for many months now. We both have been working at home, and here we are in another virtual meeting environment. But I'm really looking forward to this webinar, and I imagine that many people here just want some reassurance that the resources they're creating are accessible. And for others, it might not be something that they'd really thought of. So I'm sure there'll be quite a mix. And it's such an important thing for so many reasons for so many of our learners. So Craig's going to present for approximately 20 minutes, and then we can take some questions at the end. But do feel free to put your questions in the chat pane as we go along, and then I'll collate them all and direct them to Craig once he's finished. So in the chat bubble up at the top, if you want to put your questions in as we go along, and I will make sure Craig gets them all at the end. So, okay, over to you, Craig. Are you ready to go?
Okay, thanks, Shirley. Thanks for that. And thanks, everyone, for joining today. Good to see so much interest in accessible documents. So this is really, you can see on the slide, this is what I'm going to be covering today. So a few slides looking at why accessible documents, and I'll take you through how to make an accessible document as well. It's kind of quite basic introductory stuff. So hopefully it's something that you could use with your learners in different situations. I'll show you how you can create different formats, all for free, and I've got some useful resources as well. So if you want to sort of just sort of move between slides, there's a bit.ly link there that you can click on, hopefully, and you can just go through the slides. Or there's a QR code that you can scan. There's a few QR codes for you just to sort of look, find resources as well. So that's the kind of overview for today that we're going to be looking at. And the first question really is, well, why accessible documents? Well, the first one, I would say that in my experience of working with visually impaired learners particularly, if you have a learner with sight loss, it really helps them to access and navigate the information, and it helps to, it's a format that suits their needs. So someone who maybe uses a screen reader, who can't see the screen, but uses a screen reader, so a screen reader would interpret the information that's on the screen in audio format and speak that back to the person. They're able to navigate a document just by using the keyboard alone, and that's a really good enabling feature to be able to do that. It's sort of a legislative requirement as well that under the Equality Act we have to ensure that our materials are accessible and inclusive. So that's quite a key piece of legislation there that we really have to do it. And also within Scotland, the National Improvement Framework sets out priorities that every child achieves the highest standards in literacy and numeracy. So if you have learners who are unable to access Word documents which are not accessible, or PDFs that aren't accessible, or PowerPoints for that fact that aren't accessible, then we're really, we're going to let them down. And of course, it's the right thing to do. But I would think the best thing for me certainly about accessible documents, it just makes your own personal workflow, it makes it so much better, so much easier to navigate and create documents. And hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that as we're going through. I always think it's the way that Bill Gates intended us to use Word to create Word documents. So these are kind of five things that you can sort of use or to consider to create an accessible document. Essentially, the most important thing is that the document is structured, that you have some sort of structure, heading structure within the document that you can navigate through. And again, it's just there, it's easy to use, it's just built there within Word for you to use. Adding page numbers, again, can be really useful. If there's images in the document that convey information, some images may be decorative, then you might not need to give that image information. But if there's an image in the document that conveys information, such as a graph or a chart, then it's really good practice to add an alternative text to that image. And interestingly, Word actually now must use the artificial intelligence actually puts a description in the image for you automatically. Sometimes it's quite accurate, other times not so, but it's always good to do it manually. You may have come across websites where there's maybe lists of click here, click here, click here. Now, if you're a screen reader and you might be using a keyboard shortcut to access the hyperlinks on a web page or a document, and all you have is a list of click here, click here, click here, it doesn't make sense. So it's important to show that links are logical. And also, if you're using tables in your document, just to ensure that the rows and columns are labelled, and that helps them to make them more accessible as well. Now, the best thing about a Word document is that if you have a good accessible Word document, then you can use that one document to create it to other formats. You can create it to make the PDF more accessible. So all the information that you put into your Word document flows through into the PDF. You can create EPUBs, and I'll show you a free tool that you can download and have it in Word that you can use. You can use it for creating large print, and if there's any people who make Braille here, writers, that you can create your accessible document to Braille as well. So having that one document allows you to create it into different alternative formats. Here are some resources. I'll put up some other resources as well. So we've got an accessible online module that you can try. If you've got a phone, you can scan over that QR code, and there's hopefully you can click onto the URL there. And I've also put together a good, and Shirley's popping it into the chat as well. There's also a series of short video tutorials as well that you can get. So I've really used the video guides as part of the online learning module. So feel free to work your way through that. And if you complete it, you submit an accessible document, send it to me. And then if it's has all the right elements, then I'll send you a Cole digital badge. It doesn't get any better than that on a Wednesday afternoon. So there you go. And I'm going to kind of stop here, but if you've got access to this presentation, then the remaining slides is kind of an illustrated guide of how to do it. So as well as me showing you how to do it, there's also a guide on how to do it as well. Okay, so there's that there. So I'm going to stop presenting, and I'm just going to go into Word and start showing you how you can do that. Okay, so stop that presentation, and I'll go back in and I'll share my screen again. Okay, so here I have two Word documents. One is accessible and one really isn't accessible. And when you just look at the documents, there's nothing to give away that these, one is accessible, because they look really quite similar to each other. Same here. They all look, there's not, at surface level, there isn't a great deal of difference between them. And that's really what I'm going to just explore, is how we can sort of, the difference between a document is accessible and isn't accessible. So I'll minimize this one just now, and I'm going to show you the one that is accessible. And the telltale signs straight away is if I go into View and I go into where it has here Navigation Pane. So I've gone to View and Navigation Pane. What I have in my document is some navigation built in. So you can see I'm just going through the document and I'm using the navigation to use to get there. And the way that that's happening is because if I just close that off just now and go back in to my document, I'm going to go back into Home, into the Home tab, and I'm going to go into Styles. And the reason why that is because I've added a navigation structure into my document by using Styles. So if I click on World War I, it tells me it's a heading 1. And if I'm a screen reader user, it will also tell me that that's a heading 1 as well. If I go down to the next one, it's a heading 2. If I go next, let's find the next one, heading 2 and heading 2. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the great things about using headings, so I should just mention, to get your heading level, essentially all you're doing is, if I just click on normal, You're just clicking on the heading style that's in there. Well, the other ways you can do that, you can use some keyboard shortcuts. So one keyboard shortcut is if I press Control, Alt, and 1, that's level heading 2. Control, Alt, and 2 is level heading 3. And Control, Alt, and 3, sorry, Control, Alt, and 3 is level heading 3. So if I go back to Control, Alt, and 1, that's me back. So just by using keyboard shortcuts, place the cursor on the document and you can add headings that way. Now, if I want to change that text that's in there, the font, I'm going to go to heading 2 because there's more of them. Now, this is why it really comes into its own. If I click onto this level heading 2, and what I want to do is I want to update those, or I want to select all those headings. If I go through the document, you can see what it's done. It's just selected the headings and it's ignored the rest of the text. So now I could go into that heading, I can quickly modify it and just maybe change, let's just make it a bit bigger, 16, and OK. Similarly, if I wanted to go and change the text in here, in the non-accessible document, that one actually had New Roman Times fonts. So if I wanted to change all the text in here, so if I select all instances, so now what it's done, it's selected all the text and it's ignored all the headings. So now I could quickly go in and say modify that, and I'm just going to make that slightly bigger, maybe 13, put it up to 14, say OK. And there it goes. So it's really it's such a quick way of improving your workflow and enhancing the speed rather than just highlighting paragraphs. You can do all those things. I'm just going to do quickly put it back to how it was again. So just do Control and Z to take that back. The other thing we've got in here is you can see, close that off, we've got some images in I'll just make that a bit bigger so it's easier to see. We've got some images in there. Now, if I right click on the image, that possibly is an important image. It may be conveying some information. So what I want to go is right click and go into alt text. And then the alt text, you see, I've put that in manually there. But also there's an option to generate a description. So let's delete that in there and let me generate a description. A person in a trench. So that's actually, it's not too bad. I don't think there is anyone in a trench, it's just a trench, but it's still not, it's still pretty good. Or if it was, say, just decorative, we could just click that as decorative, and then the screen reader would ignore that as well. So I'm just going to stick with that as well and close it off. So that's alt text. Page numbers, again, that's fairly easy. That's just insert, and we've got our page numbers. And you could add your page numbers probably towards the bottom, as I've got here. And the other thing we've got here is we've got hyperlinks. So rather than clicking on, let me just create one. Actually, I'll just create, just so show you how you create one. So as I said, to find out more, go to the BBC website. Okay, so let's show you how you can make this a meaningful hyperlink. So I can highlight the text that I want to change. If I right click onto the text, I have the option here to say link. So I want to go down to the bottom and insert link. So if I insert link on there, and now you can see there's the text in there. So I'm just going to type in www.bbc website. .uk, and I can also add a screen tip as well. So the screen tips are quite good. It doesn't particularly help the visually impaired learner, but for maybe a dyslexic learner is quite good because you can add additional information. So I could say something like, for example, the BBC website has lots of up-to-date news, and say OK, and I'll say OK that. So now I've got my website, and as I hover over, you can see just above that the BBC website has lots of up-to-date news, so you're providing additional information as well. As I go down the page, I've also got built in some internal down here. I've got go to top. So if I click on go to top, that takes me back to do that. So the way to do that is if I really just do a similar way to we did before. If I go to insert and link, so rather instead of going to an existing file as I did before with that one, we place it in the document. So now you can see that because of use headings, all those headings are in there. So we could, now you can create internal navigation within the document. So that's just a case. Let me find, let me delete this, remove the hyperlink, and this time I'll do the same again. I'll highlight it, I could right click, or I can go to link. I want to maybe just move this back to the top of the document, say OK. And now when I click on the document, that takes me to the document. So a further advantage of including all these things into the document is that if I just go up, you can also create a table of contents. So now I can use a table of contents. It's a dynamic table of contents because as you change the document, you can update it without having to sort of go in and edit it. And I'll show you how you can do that. So let's just get rid of all that, get rid of that one that's just there. I'll just see if I can get rid of this table, just delete it. And I'm just going to say add in the contents, and it's done there. So the other way to do that would be going into references, the references section. Just give it time to change. So once you've got all your headings into the document, you can add a table of contents, and then it just picks up all the pages that you've got and adds it in. So let's delete that one again. Just delete all that text. Delete everything there, and I'll press, so go back to the top of my document. I want it to go here, table of contents. I'm just going to use the built-in one, and there it is there. So now I've got that. I can just click to go to wherever I want. And if I change the page numbers in the document and things move, it's really quite easy because I can